History is often described as a timeline, a straight, unbroken path from the primitive stone tools of our ancestors to the silicon chips in our pockets. We assume that technology is a ladder, and we are currently standing on the highest rung ever reached on Earth. But what if that timeline isn't a line at all? What if it is a loop? On March 2nd, 2025, that loop began to close. It didn't start with a declaration of war or an alien invasion fleet. It started with a collision in the rural expanse of Buga, Colombia. An object, descending with a trajectory that defied ballistics, tore through high-voltage power lines and slammed into the Earth. When the smoke cleared, humanity was left holding an object that should not exist, a sphere that is simultaneously darker than the void of space and older than the civilization studying it. This is not a story about a crash landing. This is a story about a wake-up call. The arrival was violent. Witnesses reported a silver object zigzagging through the lower atmosphere, executing acute angle turns that would liquefy the internal organs of any biological pilot. When it impacted the grid near Buga, it didn't just break the lines, it absorbed the surge. First responders found it embedded in the soil, a polished metallic sphere, roughly the size of a basketball. But the physical contradictions began the moment it was touched. Jose Arraz, the first local on the scene, reported the object was ice cold, despite having just channeled thousands of volts of electricity. When rain began to fall, droplets didn't roll off the surface, they vaporized on contact, not from heat, but from a localized energetic reaction. But the true anomaly occurred inside the evidence room. Initial measurements clocked the sphere at exactly 2 kilograms, a dense but manageable weight. However, within 3 hours of containment, the object's mass shifted. Without expanding in size, without changing shape, the scale reading climbed steadily to 10 kilograms. Matter does not spontaneously quintuple. In our understanding of physics, mass is a constant. For this object, mass was a variable. Dr. Jose Luis Velázquez ordered an immediate high-spectrum X-ray. He expected to see a solid casting, or perhaps a hollow industrial bearing. Instead, he stared at the monitor and froze. The scan revealed no welding seams, no casting marks, no evidence of machining. The sphere was composed of 3 concentric shells, housing a lattice of 18 microspheres arranged in a geometric symmetry that looked less like mechanics and more like biology. But it was the radiocarbon dating of the resin anchoring these components that turned a curiosity into a crisis. The University of Georgia's Center for Applied Isotope Studies ran the samples 3 times. They assumed contamination, they assumed error, but the numbers never deviated. The organic resin sealing the internal components was dated to 12,560 years ago. To understand the impossibility of this date, we must look at the world as it was then. This was the Younger Dryas. It was the end of the last ice age. Humanity consisted of hunter-gatherers, huddled in caves or temporary shelters, fashioning spears from flint and bone. And yet we are told to believe that in the middle of this prehistoric epoch, someone manufactured a device requiring cleanroom sterilization and industrial metallurgy. The sphere is an anachronism of the highest order. It predates the invention of the wheel by 6,000 years. It predates the first known smelting of copper. It predates the Great Pyramid by 7 millennia. If the dating is accurate, the implications are binary and terrifying. Either humanity had reached a Silicon Age peak before being wiped out, or the hands that built this sphere were not human at all. The analysis moved from dating to engineering. The mystery deepened. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, took lead on the materials analysis. Their report reads less like archaeology and more like science fiction. The outer shell is an alloy of high-purity aluminum blended with cerium, lithium, and neodymium. This specific combination yields a metal harder than aerospace titanium, but with the heat resistance of ceramic tiles. The problem is the timeline. Aluminum was not successfully refined until 1886. Neodymium was not isolated until 1885. To create this alloy requires a distinct understanding of the periodic table and high-pressure vacuum smelting. But the true marvel lay inside.
Embedded within the resin were 52 translucent filaments. Under magnification, these were identified as fiber optic strands, but they weren't primitive. They possessed an optical loss rating lower than the best cables produced by modern telecommunications giants. These strands connected the 18 microspheres to a central core, a hexagonal wafer that looks, for all intents and purposes, like a processing chip. The internal geometry matches what we today call quantum dot storage, a theoretical method of trapping electrons to store vast amounts of data in microscopic spaces. We are still experimenting with this technology in 2025. Someone else mastered it 12,000 years ago. The layout of the fibers mimics a neural network. It isn't designed just to move light. It is designed to process information. This wasn't a sculpture or a religious idol. It was a computer. And as researchers would soon find out, it wasn't turned off. Why build a supercomputer in the Stone Age? The answer may lie in the date itself. 12,560 years ago, the Earth didn't just warm up, it snapped. The Younger Dryas period began with a cataclysm. Ice sheets melted and then refroze. Global temperatures plummeted in a matter of months. Megafauna, mammoths, saber-toothed cats vanished. The geological record shows spikes in iridium and platinum, signatures of a cosmic impact. Plato's timeline for the destruction of Atlantis aligns almost perfectly with this date. Legends from every continent speak of great floods, fires from the sky, and days of darkness. The Buga was forged in the fires of this global death event. Its alloy is heat-resistant, its casing is impact-proof, its structure is self-healing. When researchers scratched the middle layer, the metal regenerated within 48 hours, closing the wound like living tissue. This suggests the device was not a luxury item, it was a black box, a hardened archive designed to survive the end of the world. It was built by a civilization that knew the end was coming, a people desperate to preserve their knowledge, or perhaps to leave a warning for the future. For 12,000 years, it sat silent, buried in the dark, waiting, until we dug it up, until we applied power, until March 2025. It began with the engravings. The surface of the sphere is covered in microscopic etchings. Initially dismissed as decorative, a linguistic analysis by AI models revealed they were mathematical constants, the golden ratio, pi, harmonic intervals found in DNA. But when exposed to specific electromagnetic frequencies in the lab, the engravings didn't just sit there, they glowed. The symbols acted as a circuit board, guiding energy into the core. On the night of the activation event, the sphere's passive radiation spiked. It wasn't random interference. The pulses became rhythmic, precise. It was a heartbeat, a synchronized metronome set to 34.5 hertz, a frequency associated with bioresonance and neural activity. MIT's signal processing team realized the horror of the situation too late. The sphere wasn't malfunctioning, it was booting up. It began absorbing energy from the facility's grid, draining batteries and dimming lights. The internal temperature of the room dropped as the object sucked thermal energy from the air to fuel its processes. And then it broadcast a signal. A high-amplitude electromagnetic burst directed not into space, but through the Earth. Seismic monitors 600 miles away picked up the vibration. It was a query, a handshake protocol. and the terrified silence in the lab was broken by the realization that the handshake had been accepted. At 2:14 a.m., the sensors detected a response. It was a harmonic echo, a signal mirroring the Buga sphere's pulse, but with a slight phase shift. It didn't come from the lab, it didn't come from a satellite. It came from deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean.
The implications shattered the singular artifact theory immediately. If the Buga sphere is a node, then there is a network. Other spheres, identical in design, hidden in the places humanity cannot easily reach, under the crushing pressure of the ocean floor, beneath the Antarctic ice shelf, buried in the bedrock of the oldest continents. The Buga sphere didn't just fall, it was likely dislodged from a high-altitude holding pattern or a mountain cache. But its activation has triggered a chain reaction. Since that initial burst, the sphere has ceased its erratic behavior. It is now humming with a constant low-level data stream. The fiber optic filaments inside are lit in a sequence that repeats every hour. It is transmitting. And the other nodes are listening. We are left with a chilling reality. We are not the first advanced civilization on this planet. Or we have been sharing this planet with something else for 12 millennia. The technology inside the sphere, quantum computing, self-healing alloys, gravitational mass manipulation, these are the very technologies we are currently striving to master. Is this a coincidence? Or is the sphere a breadcrumb trail? Some theories suggest it is a teacher, a repository of knowledge left by the ancestors who died in the younger Dryas, waiting for us to be smart enough to turn it on. But the darker theory prevails among the scientists who have stood in the room with it. They note the way the sphere reacts to biological presence. They note the surveillance-like nature of its optics. They fear it is not a teacher. They fear it is a camera. For 12,560 years, while we invented agriculture, waged wars, built empires, and split the atom, this network has been active, watching, recording, sampling our development. The activation in 2025 coincides with record solar activity and the weakening of Earth's magnetic field, conditions similar to the disaster that wiped out the sphere's creators. Did it wake up because we found it? Or did it wake up because it knows the cycle is about to repeat? The Buga sphere sits in a lead-lined room, humming its impossible song. We have poked it, scanned it, and measured it. We know how it works, but we don't know why. But one thing is certain: the signal has been sent. The network is awake, and whatever is on the other end of that connection knows we are here. The descent was just the beginning.